What up? Marsh Pod. We're recording this on Sunday. The latest SimWorld U rankings just dropped. Kentucky, unsurprisingly, number 1. Miami, dangerous there at 5. I really like what Dominic Bianco's been doing. Jermaine McElmore, underrated signing for that group at the 4. He's been dynamic for that team. But overall, as we've got 2 weeks left in the SimWorld U regular season before conference tournaments start, things are taking shape. So Kentucky dangerous with Glory Tate. Unsurprising to see them at number 1. I think Gonzaga continues to be perpetually underranked at 10. That team is, with Caden Shipp at the forefront, that team has been phenomenal. But every time they get one loss in the West Coast Conference, they get buried in the rankings. So they are still really good. I wouldn't rule out Gonzaga right now in the top 10. But that's not what we're talking about. We are looking at the top 5 teams under 500 who could make a run in the race to 1. Why are we doing this? Because you'll remember last season Asia Pacific was sub 500 for most of the year, not really all that good. Then they get rolling towards the end of the regular season. They jump up and they end up getting just above 500. They get themselves a seed in the at the time 16-team race to 1. They make a run. They get all the way into the semifinals. They win 2 games. That, I think, can be replicated, and I think it's going to be replicated by somebody this season because the race to 1 pool has obviously risen. We're going to get every single team involved. That's 32 teams, double the excitement, double the entertainment in the race to 1. So I think we're going to see somebody pull some upsets. It'd be easy to look at 500 teams and say, okay, who can win? And we probably are going to do that. Spoiler alert, probably going to do that in the next couple weeks. But for now, let's look at the ones that are not 500, that are maybe just below it, just fell below it, or kind of creep back up to it. And that is the line. Of these 5 teams that we've picked, none of them are at 500. They have to be below. Now, obviously, we're getting a couple that are just in that ballpark. So, technicality, you can call it. You know, we record this 24 hours later, 48 hours technically, because games don't return until Tuesday, and any one of them could be back to 500. So, we're sneaking in now and getting them. So, we're going to start. Number 5. And that's going to be the Lone Star Basketball Club. They're 9-12. They've won 3 straight games. So they're one of those teams. We record this in 2 weeks. We look at this group in 2 weeks. They might not even be eligible for our little made-up game here. But they've won 3 straight games, and their many mid-season acquisitions are starting to take hold, starting to look good. They have 2 4-game losing streaks that have really contributed to this record. So you take those out, there was a 9-game stretch where they went 1-8. You remove those. This is an 8-4 basketball team, which feels a lot more reflective of the talent that they have on this, most notably Arthur Lattimore. He is that guy. I know at the beginning of the season and during the offseason there was the discourse of, well, Arthur Lattimore, big volume, of course he's going to put up big numbers. Well, he's doing it again. And if you're going to do it at the rate at which Arthur Lattimore has been and do it at the efficiency that Arthur Lattimore has been, that means something. We can't keep looking and say, well, come up with excuses. Now, look, he's number 6 in the country, composite rank. That's a fair rank. And I think it's fair to say the people that have been doubters of Arthur Lattimore, the little iceberg that you're standing on is melting, man. It is melting. It is not there anymore. He is still that guy. Mardon has been a nasty point of attack defender. He might not be an elite scorer. I said it at the beginning of the season. I thought he was a Gary Payton II type of ball player. If his shot comes around, he's dangerous, but for now, playing defense, he's been phenomenal. Their defense, meanwhile, because of that, is flirting with being top 10. That's obviously not only because of Mardon, but they are just on the outside of being top 10 in terms of points against, opponent field goal, opponent three-point percentage. Meanwhile, Rip Bakary has been great since his arrival, 8.9 points. I'd love to see the ball find its way to Trey Bird a bit more than it has been. He's shooting 58% from deep. That's not a jump. 22, I think it is. 22 made 3, so it's not as if he's going 58 on 6 of 10 shooting, which is obviously 60%. He's doing it on decently high volume. But overall, this team has proven to be deep. And among the teams that are, if you were trying to build a team, right, you take the records away. You need a deep bench with a lot of guys that can do things. You need one guy that you don't want it to be Cooper Flagg, one guy. I've said this, and Cooper Flagg maybe be the one anomaly to this rule. I'll continue to say, one star is not going to win you it. I don't know that Lone Star has a second star, but they at least have a roster that you would say, hey, this is a lot better than a 3 games below 500 group. You take away that 1-8 stretch, And that's exactly what they are. I think they're dangerous. Number 4, we go South America. We talked about them last week. They did lose this past week, but their defense has been very good. We're getting them, as I said, technically as sub 500, 9-10 because of that last loss. But Tyler Montalvan has been good enough to be good a lot of nights. He's had really big nights. He has the capability of having really big nights and carrying upsets, which is what you're going to need if you are a sub 500 team. You need somebody to get hot and knock off somebody and knock off a big team. Kai Newby was that player last year for Asia Pacific. I think you've got a guy in that. Meanwhile, Adelson Sampaio has scored in double figures in all but one game this season. We're not. You want to talk about things we're not talking about from a week ago? That's one thing that we're not talking about. All but one game he has finished above 10 points per game. Their defense, like Lone Star, on the verge of being top 10 thanks to that recent stretch, and they hit it the third best mark in the entire league from deep. So if they get hot in the race to 1, it could come from red hot shooting from deep and their defense continuing that trend where when we talked about last week, if you looked at their latest 7 of 8 games, their last 8 games, they were a top 3 defense around 62 points per game. If that trend continues and they get hot from deep, this is a dangerous team come the race to 1. All right, number 3, H-Town Hoopers, who are 9-11. They've lost 3 straight, so again, we're getting them on that tail swing. Almighty Soul. When you talk about Arthur Lattimore being in the league, Almighty Soul has been phenomenal. He's usurped Corey Yams in the pecking order as the top guy in H-Town, which, let me ask this, quick tangent. How many times is Corey Yams going to be passed over as the number 1 guy in his team before he's not considered number 1 guy potential? Look, I'm not saying he's not. I'm not saying he's not capable of doing that. But why has he not erupted for being the viable number 2 guy over the past 2 years? Yes, Bronny James got the ball a lot. Yes, Almighty Soul is getting the ball a lot. But at some point, elite players still play elite next to other elite players. Corey Yams hasn't really done that. That being said, he can erupt. We've seen that in H-Town. We saw that last season for Showtime. Between him and Almighty Soul, that duo has the makeup of being able to pull the upsets that are necessary come, June, that this race to 1 is going to get rolling. Number 2, Indy Stripes. They're 9-10. They have one bad stretch, 1-7 over an 8-game stretch. That's like Lone Star has really buried them. But they've looked good as of late. Ever since they fired Doc Shiragone, Dylan Harper left to steal from Bill Simmons, the Ewing theory, this team just kind of looks more cohesive. They ended Philadelphia's winning streak. They beat Gotham 5, and they had a very competitive loss to Beast of the East. We don't count moral victories in the win-loss column, but at least being relevant and being competitive in those games, it matters. Lee Larick, he's been great since his return from injury, albeit in limited minutes. You'd like to see maybe him getting a little bit more. Andrew Gibson has been great. He's gotten expanded opportunities since the departure of Dylan Harper. And River Money has been red hot over the last 4 games, scoring in double figures in all 4. Lastly, Reza Red. He might not be the superstar that many hoped from him, that was probably ill-advised to put on his shoulders purely because of his age and his size combination. But he's quietly been having a really good season, shooting 50+%. He's around 10 points every game. He's around 10 boards most every game. Recently, he's been doing that. He might not be a superstar, but I think the future for Reza Red at SimWorld Prep, SimWorld U, and even potentially the SWBA, depending on what SimWorld U looks like for him, I don't think it's that crazy to think he could be a difference maker. And then lastly, number 1, it's going to be Bad Boys. 9-12, they're sub 500 thanks to an uncharacteristic 6-game losing streak, which we again talked about last season. Why could they pull some upsets? Why are they dangerous? They have 2 really good guards who are capable of taking over. They have the blueprint that some of these other teams don't, right? Lone Star, yes. Arthur Lattimore is going to be dangerous. Who else? Yes, Almighty Soul is going to be dangerous for H-Town. Is Corey Yams. You look at this backcourt with Pagnotti and Samuel Balgas. That's capable of being really dangerous. Their defense is good. They're allowing teams to shoot just 46.4% from the floor. That's the 8th best. They've been buried by a really bad 3-point defense, although that's as much contributable to luck as it is skill point. They beat Lakeshore Drive early in the season. They've hung around in most of their games against top 5 teams. They lost to Cascadia by 5. They lost to Beasts of the East by 5. They lost to Gulf Coast Lockdown by 3. That means they can get there. And come the race to 1, when things get a little hairy, when things get a little contested, you get a little nervous. You've got guys that have been there. Bo Pagnotti and Samuel Balgas have been in these situations over the last couple seasons. That matters. And I think for Bad Boys, that's what makes them a difference maker. You take away that 6-game losing streak. Again, we're nitpicking here because you have to factor in losing streaks for some of these teams. But take that away. This is a 9-6 basketball team. That's a good basketball team. That's really not much bad to say about it. If that's the group that we're going to get, a 9-6 club, and not that 0-6 club, they've got a serious shot at making a run. All right, we're back. SimWorld today. We should be locked up for all 5 days. Big thank you again to B-Ron filling in a couple times last week. So we will talk to you tomorrow morning, Tuesday morning. Well, we said recording this Sunday, so it'll be Tuesday morning. We're back on it. Monday, you saw the show earlier by the time you're listening to this in the morning. But 5 days a week, SimWorld broadcast coming back Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So thank you for tuning in, and we will talk to you on SimWorld today.